Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about the topic of depression and loneliness and even suicidal thoughts based on my own personal experiences and some professional experiences when I have met people with depression as a pharmacist in US, former pharmacist. I don't currently practice as a pharmacist or practice anything related to deeply related to pharmacy except how it applies to my daily life. So, from all my educational experiences and personal life experiences, what I have understood about depression is I've understood depression at different levels, at a very personal level or at an interactional level when I'm meeting patients with depression, and some theoretical level based on whatever we are taught about depression in different pharmacy schools. I have studied both in universities in India as well as in US. When experiencing depression as a teenager, what caused the root source of depression at that time point in my life was, even though I was raised in a family setting where on the outside everything looked normal and I had a very average middle class lifestyle in India, and I never had parents who were worrying about money because my parents were working in government. My father was working in a government job, so I never experienced the job insecurity related parental pressure in my family life. So, some children, though, I have observed from what I have seen of people who are talking about their depression, or when I have met people with depression, there are a certain segment of the population who go through depression when they are having job insecurity related worries. And if the parent's job insecurity is being verbally expressed by the parent, or even energetically the parent is experiencing some grief and whatever other anger, hatred, whatever emotions the parent is experiencing when they have job insecurity, financial worries, at that time, if a parent expresses it verbally to the family life or in front of their children, then that will directly impact the mental status or emotional status of the child. Especially if the parent say, because the parent is maybe in a low paying job and is feeling the pressure of finances, they might put pressure on the child to do better in school so that the child can grow into studying some field that will accrue them more money. This is also the exact reason why over centuries in countries, densely populated countries of Asia, most parents insist children to compete a lot in their school life, to be at the top of their class in their school life, and also want their children to take professions like medicine or engineering, because they want their children to have this high earning potential that the parents might not have had. But the same thing, which seems very a logical outcome of when a parent might be from a lower socioeconomic status, or a socioeconomic status where they were experiencing a lot of financial ups and downs, at a time, whatever pressure the parent might have exerted on a child to push them towards taking a higher paying job related coursework in school or university days, that thing, while partly logical when you are not earning so much, becomes a little less logical and becomes a little more cruel or oppressive towards a child if you're not allowing your child to flourish in a way that is attuned to the child's inherent core inner nature. And simply because you want your child to compete in the world and do better in the world, which every parent does have, that should have that concern about their child, should have that deeper interest in their child's future, because as a responsible parent, every parent should be responsibly guiding their child towards taking a good path in their life. But while the parents' role is to guide their children towards a good path in their life, especially a financial path, related choices when children are younger, or when you are living in a very competitive society where lots of population is causing unemployment and other problems, while that seems like a logical choice to do, unfortunately, that same thing that was logical maybe 100 years back, 50 years back, 20 years back, slowly has started becoming a cruel act from parents' side. So, if parents push too much their children into doing these things, then what starts happening is what was shown in some Indian movies like Three Idiots or Chichore, or we hear about these stories from personal life or in newspaper, where we see the stories where children were pushed so much by their parents to compete and do well in something, or the children feel so much pressure from their parents that they start manifesting these signs of depression, suicidal thoughts, and some children actually do end up committing suicide when they can't handle the pressure of a coursework they have joined. So, because in Three Idiots, if you will see, it was the engineering school setting that they showed in that movie was showing a setting of a very highly competitive college like IIT, where many children all across India compete for those seats, and in order to get into those seats, you are possibly the top 1 or 0.1% of brilliant students of India. And being in that top 1 or 0.1% also, after you have entered that institute, out of the 30-40 students that will be there in each of those classes, you might still not be the top of the class, because maybe you, even though you, in basic science and maths you were really good, but when you entered the program of IIT, what is required to be an engineer in those subjects, you might not be as good, or you might need a little bit more coaching in order to become good in those subjects. Or you might have felt that after 12th, whatever pressure I put myself to get through after 12th into an engineering college, I don't have to exert that pressure anymore in my life. So you might have become a little laid back while studying that engineering coursework, and then ended up not being in the top of the class, or you might have ended up failing in the class. Or when you are going to a college like IIT, you might even have moved out of your home state. You're experiencing the college life also, and in college life it's not just a college life, but you're experiencing a hostel life. So in a hostel life, you're not staying with your parents, so you don't get the food your parents are cooking for you. You may not have adequate nutritional food intake. You might be eating and gravitating, instead of mindfully eating what your parents were giving you, a balanced meal at home. In a hostel life, even if balanced meal is provided to you, you may not be consuming a balanced meal. You could be going around with crowds who are maybe brilliant students, and that's why they don't study too much. But for you to become a brilliant student, you need more hours of study, but you are competing with friends or collaborating with those friends who don't need that many hours of studying. So in doing all these things, or you might end up just drinking too much, partying too much, everything that comes with freedom of living in a hostel life, or even doing drugs, all of which eventually, slowly, depending on the kind of person you are, how much influence your outside factors had on you, how much influence your nutritional factors are having on you, all of this can end up escalating your depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts. And people don't realize this. And while I'm giving this as an example of a hostel life, this is equally true of a home life setting as well, because some students don't live in hostels. Some students might live in a PG like setting, where they are living in someone's home as a paying guest in someone's home, so thinking that they will have access to a similar family life setting that they had in their family when they moved to a new city for their studies. But even when you're living in a PG, or if you're living in a rental where 2-3 students are renting out a home to give the security of a home life, or even if you didn't even move out for your college, you are living in your own parents' home only while studying in your university courses, whatever you're doing, In each of these cases, there are some environment specific factors, place specific factors, access to food specific, and housing environment and local environment specific factors which will influence people's depression and anxiety or suicidal thoughts and other things. So there are actually, even though people usually think that depression is either a imbalance in chemicals, or people might think that suicidal thoughts are happening if children are feeling either parental pressure or competition from their peers, or failing in subjects, or people might think that assume, these are the standard assumptions and standard known things about depression. When someone is going through depression, when someone is going through suicidal thoughts, or someone has actually committed suicide, in all these cases, many a times these are the factors that are generally thought of as influencing someone to be very depressed, or have a very or take the step towards suicide. But what are the ancillary factors? The ancillary factors in Three Idiots movie, the two depression like stories that are shown in the movie, was one person was a student who tried competing for engineering post in his father's college, but he couldn't get in and he couldn't live up to his father's expectations. That's why he committed suicide, and he left a letter saying that also. But the father didn't come to know about the reason why the son committed suicide until much later in life. Then there is another person who, while living in hostel, committed suicide because whatever project he was working on was not succeeding for him. So basically, they were failing in some of the grades, or not doing as well as they used to do when they were in their hometown, all of which led to a person, someone committing suicide. So there was a expectation related suicide attempt, or real suicide. Basically, real suicide happened in both these cases, and there was also a suicide attempt in the story. So there were actually three suicide stories lines in the movie Three Idiots. And in the third suicide storyline, the person who tried to commit suicide but didn't die eventually, because he had good friends who tried to get him back from his suicide attempt and helped him in his recovery. Now that person felt the pressure of not basically the principal said something to him which he didn't want to do, so he couldn't handle the pressure of the choice he had to make in life. But in all these three conditions where someone is trying to commit suicide, it's the choice left in our life. If it doesn't, that choice that is left for us in our life, if it doesn't align with our emotional nature, psychological nature, that choice, or if we hold a false perception about the choice possibility that we have, that is the time when some people try to commit suicide. Because realistically speaking, the boy who was the principal's son, when he committed suicide, he had an alternative to be more honest with his dad that he can't handle the pressure of studying for this highly competitive exam. And yes, maybe his father would have been abusive towards him, maybe his father would have been disappointed at him, but that discomfort of someone being disappointed at you should not drive you, make you so uncomfortable that you push yourself to committing suicide. Because it is a workable problem. If you are not passing an exam, what will happen if you don't pass a competitive exam in the year you were meant to pass? Maybe you will have to sit another 1 year, wait another year to give that exam again, maybe wait another 1-2 years to actually clear that exam in the right way, aligned with you. Or make a choice that instead of waiting 1 or 2 years, I would rather not study engineering, I would rather study some other subject that is more in alignment with my capacity to study. Or they could even, because he's a principal of a highly reputed college, he will the parents earnings aren't that bad, so that son could even decide to study in a foreign university where the pressure of a competitive exam may not be as competitive, because when billions of Indians are applying, out of billions, let's say millions of Indians are applying for a highly competitive exam, in those millions you are being the top 1% or 0.1% is a very great thing. But instead of competing in an exam where millions are applying, if you compete in an exam where only thousands are applying, maybe you will do better there and you will not feel so much pressure of excelling or doing something that where you feel like a failure. Second thing is the question of failure itself. In India or in Asian countries or in very highly densely populated parts of the world, people also have to start realizing that failure isn't the end of life. Yes, failure will make you struggle a little bit more in life, failure will make you change your life path, but failure is actually an obstacle and challenge which, if you meet actually failure in your younger phases of life, it's a very good thing. There's a reason why it's said that failures are the stepping stone to success. That's why if you fail in one exam, 10 exam, multiple exams, it doesn't mean that you are a failure in life. It just means for that exam you don't either have the right educational knowledge to compete in that exam, or your educational knowledge and capacity is not to the level where you should be competing in the exam. Because like when I see certain things online, like there are quizzes, mensa quizzes or visual pictographic quizzes about tell the name of a movie or tell the saying and phrase that is showing up here. Now some people are very if you do those mensa level quizzes or these kind of quizzes, some people have that either you have to practice a lot to excel in these things, or you have to have a very intuitive instant knowledge to excel in these things. Now both of which, if you have a home life where say you have abuse going on, very subtle abuse possibly, not like very high level abuse, if you have a abuse related lifestyle, then at a time when abuse is going on in the background, the level of clarity you need to do these high level mathematical or very complex things in excelling in these exams, that kind of reasoning skill can't build in you if you didn't have a comfort filled balanced, aligned, healed home life. So those you have to also understand that, say if you was one student is from a family who has some kind of abusive life circumstance going on, and there's another student who doesn't have any abuse related circumstance going on, which child will have the better capacity to study in those subjects where instant clarity is required, instant calculative certain factors are required? The child who is either able to transcend that abuse and not let the abuse affect its whole mental makeup, or the child whose abuse is very minor level or negligible level, or a child who doesn't have abuse at all and has a very comfortable life circumstance, that all that the child is focusing on is studying, going to classes, taking all these coursework that helps it in building its mental makeup to be able to compete in these exams really well, right? So you have to understand this difference about society. Everyone needs to understand the one who's excelling as well as the one who is failing, because the one who is excelling might someday in their life, when working in an office, meet a co-worker who is not excelling, and that co-worker might be going through abuse, or the co-worker's children might be going through abuse, or not just abuse. Abuse is just the tip of the iceberg of the horrors people experience sometimes in their life. So and abuse, the verbal abuse is very easy to detect, physical abuse is very easy to detect, but those who go through psychological abuse, covert abuse, their abuse is very hard to detect. But how is their abuse going to show up? Their abuse is going to show up in the form of depression. Their abuse or neglect will show up in the form of depression or anxiety. Their abuse will show up in in the form of how in some of my videos, if you've observed, I have had experiences related to abuse of minor levels, not really major levels, so I don't get messed up that easily when I'm speaking in my videos. But even then, there are multiple videos I have made where, while I'm very much well versed with some of the topics I'm discussing in the videos, even then there are certain 0.1%, 1 minute mistakes or 1 second mistakes I have made in my videos when the abuse related or health circumstance related things are doing something where my focus goes away for a second in my brain and causes me to say some misspeak about something or get confused about two topics, which is what dyslexia is. So those children who have dyslexia, they could have either physical or emotional or psychological abuse going on in their life, but there's also a biochemical thing that can go on in our health when some disease is going on in our health, undetected disease. It may not be a very easily detectable disease or diagnosed disease, but if some disease is disrupting our brains, blood and circulatory systems function, if that circulatory systems function is distorted because of some biochemical problems in our body, or if our nervous systems interconnected pathways are getting distorted or broken at a time, if because of either a chemical in our environment or biological microbial stuff in our environment and in our body, which is disrupting these signaling pathways at that time also, so that's a biochemical abuse going on in your body or a microbial abuse going on in your body. But for some children, there could be literal physical abuse, literal emotional abuse, literal psychological abuse going on in their body as well. So depending on what is going on with you, you will have this problem of making the thing that is very normal for a kid without who doesn't have any of these circumstance manifesting in their life, for them doing these mensa like things might come very easily after a few years of practice. Whereas for another person, that same mensa like thing, they might be very capable of doing it, but they may not be able to do it in a timed manner, or they might make some silly mistakes, like out of the 100 questions they will apply, they might make 5 or 10 mistakes because at that time their brain's biochemistry is impacting them, or their abuse related trauma that has happened in their brain is impacting their reasoning and logical skills. Or even when you are in a timed exam, at that time there is a pressure also of finishing that exam in the right time, so that pressure also can develop trauma in your brain. So that same, if you take two students who one who gets very nervous with timing of things and one who is very doesn't care, who is very master of time, for the person who is a master of time, the time is not a pressured thing. But the person who is not a master of time, and when time starts playing a factor in these exams, most of these exams are timed exams, even if they might have the capacity to solve that puzzle or solve those questionnaire of any of these high class institutes, they will not be able to do it in the time set up for them to do it. Because this has literally happened to me when I have given GRE, when I have given GMAT. In GMAT, I get more confused because GMAT's maths reasoning skills need a sort of thinking pattern which needs a lot of practice, or also you need a abuse-free life to be able to excel in GMAT's mathematical reasoning skills section. And I found GMAT, I didn't have a great score in GMAT in my mathematical reasoning section, especially because there's a time element, especially because I couldn't complete many questions. Some questions where, those greater than, less than, where, more deeper reasoning has to be involved in solving those math equations. I can't solve it in the short time provided. I either need more practice, or I felt after giving the exam that I needed more practice of those math sections. But the second thing is, even with the timed matter, I am the kind of person who cannot solve those questions in the time limit set for those exams. For me, it takes longer to process mathematical reasoning related things. Either a long time is needed or a large number of years and hours of practice is needed. But what comes very easily to me, for me, what comes very easily is the English speaking skills in the GMAT or GRE exams. And in the GMAT and GRE, why am I good with the English speaking aspect? Is because since childhood days, while I didn't have a home life where I was communicating a lot with people, and I also grew up in a country where I was not even having friends who speak English in normal life. We would converse usually in school in Hindi. We would only speak with our teachers in the English language. And so while I speak English, my English speaking skills may not be up to par with British English or American English. But when I read and write in English, my English is not that bad, and or I have a wide range of vocabulary that I can use while writing and reading English. And that's why in those exams I have done really well in English aspects of the exams. And again with English also, I had a good vocabulary because I read a lot of books all through my childhood days in English, American English, British English related books. I used to watch American shows, British shows, other countries' English shows. That's why all the English language exams also I excel in. And this reasoning skill, verbal skills, I developed even though in my home life, also, and in my personal social life also, I didn't have many friends, or I didn't have any social circle in my home or outside my home with whom I would communicate a lot in English. But even then, I mastered the English language communication. How or where? When I became a pharmacist, at that time I had to continuously communicate with my patients, doctors, all the time, and the 12 hours of work life that I would have in a day. In those 10 to 12 hour work life, most of the times it was 12 hours, some days it was 10 hours or 8 hours also. But in those 12 long hours of work life, I had to speak with people for 8-10 hours continuously. Like some days it was 12 hours of speaking, some days it was only 8-10 hours of speaking, depending on if we got a breather in between and there was a little slow phase going on in our work life. So those 12 hours of speaking continuously all the time with multiple people helped develop my skills. Then when I went and joined the MBA program, in MBA program also we do a lot of presentation in front of our class and in front of our different business projects. So at the time also I got to speak a lot more than I have ever spoken when I was younger as a child in India. And I used a lot of the English language, and that's how also my English language skills, speaking skills improved. And again, when in the last few years I've not been working, I've not been communicating much with people, again my English language skills goes away, and I start speaking in very normal English rather than complex English when I don't have many people to communicate with. So our math skills, science skills, any kind of skills that a child develops in their life, that skill can get developed only when they have the right circumstances to develop that skill or use that skill. So you either have to have a lot of coaching to develop these skills, or you have to have a personal interest. I had personal interest in reading lots and lots of books, and mostly story books and fiction books, but sometimes non-fiction also. So majority of my learning of the language came from fiction. And then also, other than that, I just love that communicating in that language. That's why I picked up that language, even though I had two other languages too from India that I have also learnt in childhood days. But my communication skill is better in English compared to my own mother tongue, or my own or the language of Hindi that we used to speak with our friends in school days, or when communicating with friends in India, most of us speak in that language. So despite all of these, whatever develops in a child develops because of the core inherent nature of the child also. So that's why when a child is not able to compete in an exam and finds the exam to be pressuring, yes, you can become, there are multiple things you can do. One who has faced this pressure of highly competitive exams that didn't work out for them, they can eventually become a teacher of the future who develops a better skill set for those students who are having difficulty in learning. that one person can have a life purpose like that. One could decide this is this kind of competitive exams is not something I want to do, because what will you do after entering and becoming the 0.1% of Indian who graduates from this top elite institute? Majority of these students, and that's what Three Idiots also expressed in the movie, that majority of those students, what do they end up doing? They end up doing and taking some high paying job in a foreign country. Many of them do. They go to a foreign country, and while they studied engineering, after engineering, some goes into banking job, someone might go into a business job, someone might go into a teaching professor related work. Whatever they do, they all don't end up becoming an engineer at all. Whereas one of the main characters of that movie was someone who actually went into the college as a bogus person taking that college's that person wanted to study. He was a very studious person, so the main character studies in the name of another character, and the degree certificate he ends up getting actually goes because it was he took the seat in place of another boy. That boy actually ended up getting the degree certificate, and using that degree certificate, because they are moneyed people, they are using just the certificate for doing some business work. But the actual learning of it, this boy didn't end up having a certificate in his name. But even though he didn't end up having a certificate in his name, he was very good in the engineering subject. Because he was good in the engineering subject, he was able to bring some engineering related changes in a village life and in a secluded life, where he ended up becoming an entrepreneurial and successful person. Because for him the certificate was not important, for him the learning was important. And apart from the certificate and learning being important, he was also good at what he did. So because he was good at what he did, he got success because he was good at it, and it was aligned with him, and it had nothing to do with the standard norms of society of excelling in something. Like, he also came from a very poor family, so for his family, him not having or not having a certificate wouldn't have mattered. For his family, some practical resolutions would have mattered. So he ended up helping also those kind of people who needed practical resolution to their life problems. So that's why that movie was such a good movie to show that pursuing your passion or something that aligns with your personality, how important that can be for some people who have to bring some change in the world, who are here in the world to do something that will bring change, who are here to excel, but where you are meant to excel may not be where society expects you to excel. So societally, he excelled in that program and became one of the top students, or not always he was the top student. In fact, his teachers didn't like him when he was asking them some innovative questions or different questions. So he was not appreciated by his teachers also in that program. But he had managed to at least pass that program with a certificate, and that certificate didn't matter to him because he had taken some other student's place. So that student took away the certificate, who had enough money, gave him the money to sit in the coursework, but who actually took the certificate to use that. It's a thing that happens some parts of India. Not everyone does this in India, but some people end up doing this kind of identity theft, you can say. So using that identity theft, now that someone else got the degree, they are doing some professional work. But what quality professional work do you think with that engineering degree they might be doing? They have an engineering degree, but because they've not studied the engineering subject now, or they don't understand that subject deeply, when say they are going and using that degree for doing some construction work, some mechanical work, are they going to hire good people to do that work? Are they? Because they don't even understand the subject material. So whoever comes up to work for them at a cheap rate, maybe they might get success for getting a cheap rate worker and getting some tenders and getting some jobs where some construction they might do, some engineering thing they might do. But in the end, what will happen? the quality of work will fail because you didn't have a quality education, you didn't take the quality education, you didn't use the quality education, all you used was your money. But after using your money, the end result is, and which is what happens also in India, that we have all these news of bridges collapsing, buildings collapsing, and if you even buy the most elite buildings in India, sometimes even in those elite 3 crore 4 crore building, you will have some problem in the construction of the building that will eventually show up after a couple of years, because quality work is not happening in our country. And it's not just true of India, it's also true of any corruption related place, any place where such kind of identity thefts happen, any place where money plays more a role than the quality of the human being, any place where competition plays more a role than collaboration in the right way. Because in work also, there are so many people, not just in India, everywhere globally, people look at the jargon of collaboration and think that they should also collaborate, but when they actually start collaborating, again things start collapsing, because even though they have got the intuitive insight, or they stole someone's idea and thought that collaboration is the right way to do something, but they're collaborating out of not the real need for collaboration, or the without the real understanding of what collaboration truly means between people. And that's why sometimes what seems like from the outside as a collaborative effort also ends up failing. And which is also why when bridges fail, some construction fails, when our life is failing, when our health is failing, all of these ancillary factors related to collaboration related things, understanding related things, understanding of your life purpose related things ends up causing these failures. And when these failures are at a mass scale level, that is when suicide related things start happening. Because for the boy who maybe in his school life he had good friends, but when he moved to a new city for studying in this highly elite program, there he is maybe he's a simple small town boy, and these other boys may not be simple small town boys who are his roommates. They might be boys from a elite family in a big city who got into the program by just paying money for the seat possibly. So when he is missing his home, he may not have a right place to talk about his home life. When he is trying to do something, he might be brilliant at, because he was trying to construct this helicopter like thing, robotic related thing, and when he was trying to construct it, he was having some design flaw where he couldn't fix the problem, and he felt like a failure. And again, the pressure of not feeling like a failure is so high in India that if you fail even at a minor level, people get very much into depression and suicidal thoughts. I've also felt like a failure. I've also felt like dying. This aspect has happened to me as well, and I didn't even have parental pressure, because in my family, being a woman is who is studying was not valued at all. For my family, if a woman just studies until university or college level and then goes and gets married, that is considered success in this family. So other than that, everything else is a failure for a woman. If you don't marry, if you don't have a job, if you are just simply studying things that no one else finds valuable, none of it is valued in my family. That is fine. But even then, all of us as a human being do have a tendency that we want to succeed. There's nothing wrong in wanting to succeed at what we want to pursue, even whether you're pursuing it as a passion, whether you're pursuing it because your parents forced you to pursue, whether you're doing it because it's a societal expectation to do it. Whatever is the reason, all of us want to succeed. But even when you do want to succeed, it is important to understand that if you had the will to succeed, knowledge to succeed, still you didn't succeed, or you practiced a lot and then also you didn't succeed, or you're competing against a lot of people and you thought you were succeeding, but then also you didn't completely achieve the top level that you wanted to achieve. It's okay if you didn't achieve that top level, and that it's okay aspect will show up not at the day when you failed, or at that time it's okay to grieve also, but don't grieve so much that your grief leads you to commit suicide. don't grieve so much that your grief is leading you to hold a false perception that because you have failed you can never succeed in the future, and hence you should kill yourself because you have become a failure. So what, you got one failed grade in one subject, in one aspect of 8 subjects, 10 subjects you're studying in the college life. I've not completely failed subjects, but I have been in the brink of failure because of depression, because of other life problems. I was going in such a negative phase in life. I couldn't focus on my studies. Universe just completely stopped me from also sometimes doing some work that was maybe future. Now I'm realizing after 10 years, when I didn't do that work, when I would have almost failed, but I didn't fail because teachers were a little graceful and didn't give me failing grades. But whatever was the reason, I could have failed. I nearly failed. I actually also did fail my PhD qualifiers. So I have had different elements of failure in different aspects of my life where I was near failure, I did actually fail, or I just barely didn't manage to fail because of grace of someone. But whatever happened, internally I felt like a failure. Internally I was failing at other things. When someone gave me the grace to not fail in an exam, at that time I was failing in my personal life because I was going through a divorce, or going through even wondering whether I should live in US, whether I should live outside US, so, or in some other country. So all these things that was working and going on in my life, where multiple factors can cause you to fail, whatever is your reason. It could be individual specific reason that you're not understanding that concept well. Here, that guy who committed suicide, whose helicopter like thing project was not working, the other character in the main movie, he managed to make it work. But even though he managed to fix the minor problem that needed fixing, because he was not collaborating with this other boy, or by the time the other boy gave him the solution, he had already committed suicide. So this is also the thing, that by the time some help might come to you, if you don't hold the faith that you will get the right help, if that passing is really that important for you and for your future life, maybe all you need to pass is the right friend to come and help you, which is what the collaborative aspect of work is. That boy who committed suicide now, if he had lived, he and this guy who is our main character of the movie 3 Idiots, both of them would have played by Amir Khan. Both of them could have been a future collaborator and maybe helped each other even develop something much better than what ended up being developed in the world. Because that is also the purpose of having so many humans coexisting on earth at the same time. So you never know when what worth and value you will have in someone's life, but you will only come to know that worth and value in someone's life when you understand that your worth and value and identity should not be too much focused on all the time being successful. It's healthy to have a healthy amount of self-respect to want to succeed in something, but it becomes unhealthy and toxic when as a result of failure you decide that you are unworthy as a human and you should commit suicide. Even if your parents scolded you and said you are unworthy as a human, like maybe if the parent scolded you, like with the professor who was the head of the department, who was the head of this institute virus, when his son committed suicide, before his son might have committed suicide, when he failed his exam, his dad out of his ego could have told him like, how did you not pass? I'm the like, for the dad it could have been an ego issue, that being a head of an institute where so many boys are passing and studying under him, how is it that his own son failed? But there he has to understand that his own son has failed, maybe because he wasn't involved in teaching his son, maybe because his son, being 50% his biological son, 50% he has genetics of his wife, may not be designed to study in this highly elite institute. Those things the father also has to realize, and maybe the father would have realized eventually, maybe not on the day when the son has failed, not on the week or year or maybe even 5 years after the son has failed, but eventually he might have understood it after he had met these other students in his coursework who were also failing, right? So the boy only simply had to wait it out. but this waiting out a uncomfortable phase in life, waiting out a uncomfortable journey of life, and if not waiting it out, if you connect, and this is where I have felt when I have been depressed, when I have been suicidal, the thing that has helped me is sometimes in some aspects of life is having faith that this failure is just a temporary phase. Second is trying to do the best after the failure in whatever else I am good at doing, so not attaching myself to the thing at which I have failed. For that reason, whatever was at that time when I failed my PhD qualifiers, at that time I didn't realize what are the reasons why I failed, but I didn't, and I was grief stricken for a year or 6-7 months about the failure. But I decided to move on from the failure to do the other things. Like when one door, failure means just one door has shut for you, but that doesn't mean that other doors related to your intellectual capacity, your work capacity will not open. In fact, if I hadn't failed, I wouldn't have gone into becoming a pharmacist. If I hadn't become a pharmacist, I wouldn't have had the platform to understand that I love speaking to people, or other things that a pharmacist job does, all the operational skills that I understood about myself. I wouldn't have understood that whole potential of my life if I had continued doing research work. So the potential that was within me would not have been achieved if I had passed my PhD qualifiers. So that's why also sometimes failure will happen, that the place where you are going may not be the area where if you go your full potential will be realized. That's why God will also shut those doors where if your full potential won't be realized there, or the paths that will emerge for you may end up adding to your depression or unworthiness. God will not take you in those paths. They will take you to a different path where you can be the best version of yourself, thrive in the best way possible for yourself. But in order to understand this, you have to understand God, or slowly begin to understand the journey of God. Because I didn't understand God or God's ways when I was in my 20s. It took me 10 years and 10 years of other failures to finally understand why those failures happened, to finally realize why success was not meant to happen in those pathways. Because if those pathways had opened for me, I would have been a much different person than who I am today, and the value and worth that I feel about myself, despite not meeting any societal expectation, any family expectation, any even self-directed hopes that I had for myself, or wishes that I had for my life to unfold at this point of time in my life. Even though none of these manifested, what I wanted to manifest in my life didn't manifest, what my parents wanted, what my family wanted, what society wants a person to manifest, what cultures might want people to manifest, none of those expectations I have met currently in my life, or I have met very superficially at a bare minimum, or very low scale level. But despite that, I am much more confident now, much more understanding about my value and worth, much more trusting of the process of becoming who I should become, rather than becoming who the society thinks I should become, becoming who I feel out of what is normal expectation of other people I should become, becoming what I was pressured or thinking that I have to take the pressure of becoming. All of these I had to shed. The more you shed these expectations, the more you are going to become who you are meant to be. And that's when your depression also will go away. Suicidal thoughts will also go away. The feeling of unworthiness goes away. And in some kids' cases, when depression is not there, instead of depression, some kids might experience the opposite experience of anxiety and feeling of unworthiness that can cause their anxiety to increase and cause them to become more and more hyperactive and competitive about doing multiple things without understanding again what is the right thing they should be doing than multiple things that they are focusing on doing. And or if you are like misaligned with your soul path, again the anxiety starts happening because your soul is calling you to take a pause, take a rest. Those people who are not willing to address the importance of rest in their life, those people who are not getting a restful place in their life, those people who are getting into the bandwagon of I have to just do more and more because society expects me to do more, they get into this hyperactive anxiety phases in their life. So I'll talk about anxiety a little later because I experience anxiety at a much minor level scale than I experience depression. But both depression and anxiety also, apart from the societal pressure, social pressure, family pressure, our own individual pressure to succeed in the world, while these will cause people to be anxious or depressed about failures or things where they feel they are not living up to the success expectation that they should live up to based on their measure or their societies or cultures measure or country specific factor related measures. But apart from this is one aspect of people who undergo depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Other than this, people don't realize this, but this is what I eventually ended up realizing. The secondary factor that influences all these is lack of right nutrition. So while you are a college student or you are competing in an exam, when you are in your home life, especially if you have come from a family, Indian family, Asian family, what happens is our parents are doing our feeding for us. So in Asian family, that's why it's the norm that the boys end up after graduating from school also or college also, they still end up staying with their parents, because when they are staying with their parents are taking care of all their needs even when they are 20, 30, 40-year old. So the parents will be taking care of their comfort, the parents will be taking care of keeping the home clean, the parents will be taking care of buying the groceries, giving the adequate nutrition and food, and the child doesn't even have to think about what food they have to eat, what nutritious balanced nutrition they have to intake, what clean home circumstances they have to live in, who their parents are either hiring someone to clean their clothes or the parents are cleaning their clothes and keeping their clothes neat and tidy and ironed. So all these things are happening in Indian boy's life. Indian girl gets to experience this until when? Until either when she gets married or until she moves out of the family life. After that, Indian girls don't get all these things from their parents. But a boy keeps getting this for a long time from their parents, and as a consequence of it, they have a very cushioned life where they don't have to think of anything except their job studies, or sometimes other than job and studies. And I'm talking about a middle class family life. So in a middle class or a higher class family life, you don't have to focus on anything except studies, focus on anything except job, and then if you get married, then you need to start focusing on your family responsibilities, right? But in these things, when parents are taking over your life, at the time parents are also taking care of the balanced nutrition, what they have understood as adults for 20-30 years or more. Those 30 years of decades of experiences of the parents have led them to know what is good food, balanced food, nutritious food. If your parents are not mentally ill or socially ill, then they will be providing you with balanced food, good food, nutritious food, all of which then will not make you feel as depressed. And being in a comfortable home setting, again you will not be depressed because you're not thrown out of your comfort zone. But anyone who doesn't have these parents, who have mentally ill parents, socially ill parents, abusive parents, do you have a comfort zone in your home life? So that will also add to your depression if you have mentally, socially, emotionally, physically ill parents. And if not parents, if you have some siblings like that, that adds to your internal depression as well. It may be a consciously known depression, it could be a subconscious depression. Then there could be also some overt abuse related to these mental and social illnesses of your parents that could also influence your depression. Then if you go to a hostel life or college life where you're staying outside your family, because you're not staying with family anymore, and when you're in your early 20s or teenage years, At the time you may have learned theoretically what is a balanced nutritious meal, but practically getting access to those balanced nutritious meals may not happen always, because you might be too focused on competing for your exams. Because in your family life, what did you do when you are living with family until your college or university years, until you're 18 or 22 years of age? At that time, until that age, your parents were deciding what meals to give you, so you didn't have to think about what food I should eat. All you had to do was, that 10 o'clock is dinner time, or 1 o'clock is lunch time, whatever is your standard time of meals in your home. That time you expect your mom to cook something for you, dad to bring some snacks for you, you eat it, and that's it. But when you are outside your home life, there's no mom, no dad looking after you. So what started happening for me? It started happening, my food cycle got disrupted, because first of all, if I'm living with my roommates, one roommate's dinner time might be 8 o'clock, another roommate's dinner time might be 10 o'clock. We might end up eating at 9. Or your lunchtime might be 1, someone's lunchtime might be 2, you end up eating in the middle. Or even if you are not eating with your roommates, if you're eating out in your college canteen, you eat according to what? According to the time you get in between the work you're doing in your research work. Like when I was a research worker, in between the 8-10 hours I'm spending in my lab, when I get the time when I'm really hungry, that's when I'm going to eat something. So if I'm working continuously throughout the day, I might have had some breakfast at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. But if I have a long series of experiments going on, some days I will eat at 1 o'clock, some days I might eat at 2 o'clock, some days I might even forget to eat lunch and I eat a little late at 4 o'clock. So all these different timing of eating started happening to me. And like that, many students who are like very studious kind of a person, who are not too hungry about food, we eat only when we are nutritionally feeling challenged, or our body is saying go and eat. At that time we'll go and eat, rather than always taking the time to eat at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was that kind of a student. So obviously, naturally, a part of my depression was also happening because I was getting nutritionally deprived and nutritionally challenged. Because at the time when I would go, like if I go at 1 o'clock, what you get in our cafeteria at 1 o'clock, maybe all the balanced nutritious meals will not be available only when I go to the same cafeteria at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock. By then all the good meals are gone. So at that time I'm left with the meals that are not as nutritionally balanced, or I'm left with those meals which I do not like eating, because I would prefer eating vegetarian food, but sometimes the vegetarian food would get over, because I'm living in a state where non-vegetarian food is a priority. So many non-vegetarian food would remain, and most of the vegetarian food would be gone. So the vegetarian food would be gone, and I would eat chicken occasionally, or chicken and fish might remain, but I don't like eating fish. So again, if nothing is available, maybe then I might take up a fish dish. But if I'm not feeling like eating that fish dish, if I'm not feeling like eating any of the other non-veg that is available, some days I didn't even have the food that I want to eat. The nutritious food was not accessible, and in the vegetarian option, all that was left was jello or a salad, which is all wilted now, because for 2-3 hours it's been outside. So then wilted salads I didn't like eating, and jello would give me that energy boost, but it will not give me, or a pudding will give me an energy boost, but it would not give me the nutritional thing I need from proteins and vegetables and other things, carbs, right? Carbs I would get, fat I would get, but I would not get the proteins and vegetables that my body is nutritionally craving. So, and initially in the first few years you do this, your body will not protest. Your body has enough reserves of some of these elements. Or maybe if you're cooking in your home life, at that time your home cooking and all will supplement your nutritional needs. But anytime a woman is becoming pregnant or a woman is becoming sicker in life, the nutritional challenges, or having more calorie output needed, because even when I was working in a lab, I had 10 hours of work life in a lab also. But still, with the 10 hours of work life in a lab, I also had in those 10 hours the luxury to go and sit in a stool, go and rest for 15-20 minutes while eating lunch, or have a 1 hour long lunch, or 1 hour lunch, half an hour dinner time break. All these was possible. So even though maybe 10 continuous hours I was doing some lab work, but in those 10 continuous hours also I still had 1.5 hour break time. So I was working only 8 to 1.5 hour break time, and some hours are just traveling time to and fro from the cafeteria. So, or going to the bathroom breaks, or taking a water break. So all these meant that I'm actually working only maybe 8 hours maximum. But when I'm doing that same 10-hour, 12-hour work in a pharmacy, that is when I'm actually working for 12 hours, and I'm mostly not getting any break. I'm hardly getting half an hour break in the day, and most of the time I'm working continuously for 11 and a half hours. So that also takes a energy out of you. So, or even on a 10-hour pharmacy work day, same thing. I'm still working maybe 9.5 hours, whereas in a lab, even though the work day seems like a 10-hour work day, I'm only technically working 8.5 hours. So that extra 1 hour, 2 hours that you're working in a different setting, that plays a toll. While in a lab, I'm only interacting with 2-3 lab mates, or while eating lunch I might interact with one friend or the other. Energy output is also not that much, but in a pharmacy, energy output is more when I'm speaking so much to hundreds of patients, or if not hundreds, at least 50-60 people in a day continuously, right? So all of this will take a toll. And then is it possible that I'll become nutritionally deprived because I've not eaten more in comparison to what energy output I am doing? I'm not eating maybe even nutritionally. In order to get the instant energy, I might take a granola bar or a fruit juice or a milkshake, which I used to do when I was working in a pharmacy, to get that instant energy boost. But to get that deeper nutritional boost, I was not getting the deeper nutritional needs met. So naturally, I started getting vitamin D deficiency. I started having iron deficiency. I started having different kinds of deficiencies show up in my body, because nutritionally I was getting challenged. And that nutritional challenge is indirectly correlated. While these deficiencies are the major deficiencies that were showing up in my blood test, there were also minor deficiencies going on in my body, all of which combined then was also leading to depression like symptoms in my body. So that is also another element people have to focus on when we want to heal someone who, or treat someone who is depressed. Understand what are the life circumstances involved that are aiding their depression. Because for some, while I was a student living in a foreign country, someone might be a student living in a different state of the same country they live in. Someone might have just moved for a job to a different country or a different place. Someone might have even moved just 1 hour from their family, but they don't have the same comfort and luxury of the family life that they used to have earlier. So all of which adds to energy output, adds to nutritional deficiency, adds to also emotional comfort zone, mental and other communication related problems, all of which can add to someone's depression or anxiety related symptoms. Because you will also have, now coming to anxiety and depression both can manifest also when there are biochemical changes going on in your brains, not simply because of nutritional deficiency, not simply because of lack of happiness based hormones in your body, but because of other biochemical changes happening in your body, which can also manifest from pesticides in our environment or other chemicals influencing our brain biochemistry, because of which if there are release of those biochemicals like acetylcholine in our nerve terminals, if excess acetylcholine is released, which can happen with certain pesticide related exposures and poisoning, At the time when excess acetylcholine is released in your brains, at the time you will be hyperexcitable. And if it's acetylcholine release plus other motor neuron functions disruption, then you will not simply be hyperexcitable in personality or anxiety levels. Your body also will show some motor activities which are showing that some kind of pesticide is impacting your motor activities. Some pesticides will also exposures, and these exposures are happening how? It's happening because if you live in a housing society, the housing society has done pest control, that might influence you. If you are eating foods which have been raised with pesticides in the environment, or while transport pesticide exposure was there, or while storage in a retail store pesticide exposure was there, all of these mean your food also has pesticides. If you're cooking, if you bought organic food with no pesticides, no chemicals, but again if your home environment has pesticides in the water supply or air supply, again some pesticide cross contamination can end up happening while you're cooking the food or storing the food in your homes. At that time exposures could have happened, and both of which then end up impacting your health again. So you can end up having anxiety related symptoms. And some people can also end up having, if cell death is happening, if cell death is manifesting in micro levels because of pesticide exposures, again when cell deaths are happening, the cells that are need or biochemical processes disruptions can also end up happening because of how pesticides bind to certain receptors in our body. All of these combined can also lead to depression as well. So for me, instead of anxiety, depression was manifesting as a symptom in US when I was having pesticide exposure related health symptoms. Whereas in India, I was having because of pesticides as well as other chemicals also in water supply in India, I got not simply depression, I was getting anxiety related symptoms too. Because certain chemicals also, when they are harmful to our body, what starts happening when we have multiple chemical exposures, and India being a densely populated country, Mumbai having a higher amount of population than Utah where I used to live earlier, when there is higher density of population, there is higher level of pollution as well. When higher level of pollution is present in your atmosphere, in your water, in your food, in your clothing, at that time multiple chemicals are impacting your health. And when multiple chemicals are impacting your health, your body is in a physical stress response cycle. So you will see people who live in densely populated areas, people who are from lower socioeconomic status, and hence buying the lower quality food. And what will the lower quality or cheaper buy one get one offer food have? Those buy one get one offer foods or cheap quality food, all of which will have either nutritional content less or higher level of chemical exposures in them. That's why those are cheap foods. And because of which, what is going to happen is you are consuming more of high amounts of different kinds of chemicals from your food or from your clothing, and all of these high amounts of exposure daily in your life is leading to one stress response factor that will show up in most of our body is the cortisol levels. And cortisol can easily be observed when you have a lot of abdominal fat or fat accumulation in some 2-3 different parts of your body. At that time it means you have had a lot of high cortisol is likely in you. Then also, if you do some other stress response tests, which I did for myself, I found that my C-reactive protein was high, which is also a stress response protein. And that stress response, people think C-reactive protein is just linked to cancer, but I feel C-reactive protein is also high for other disorders where people are undergoing high levels of stress. It could be high level of stress from multiple chemicals in your environment. It could be high level of stress from abuse going on in your life. It could be high level of stress from multiple medications you might be taking. It could be high level of stress from combination of medicines and abuse and other stress responses in your body that is manifesting as a result of complex trauma manifesting in your body. So those people also will be very jittery, will be highly reactive, will be very highly prone to having health issues related to anxiety. So either they will be hyper excitable when high level of stress response is going on, but at that time, if right treatment didn't happen at that time, if right treatments circumstances didn't emerge from them, which happened to me, like I went into a heightened stress response phase. But slowly our body also being a very balancing body, it has the capacity to balance itself again. So my body rebalanced itself. Of course, I also took some measures to reduce the heightened stress in my body. So when high levels of pesticides were there in one place, I moved from that place and went on a trip. In that place, the number of pesticides, because the population density was less, number of pesticides and number of chemicals in that environment might have been lower. So when they were lower in places where pesticides and other chemicals were lower, my health was better for a while. But the moment again, if in that place also temporarily, say for 2 weeks, they didn't do any pest control, my health was good or average. It was not like if I was below average health when living in a place with high pesticide and other chemical exposure. When I traveled to a place with a little less of those chemicals, my body stabilized itself because less chemical exposure is there. When my body is stabilizing itself, that doesn't mean I'm still at successful health level, but from health danger level, I have gone into moderate health level possibly. But again, in that moderate health level or just below danger level when I'm existing, at that time again, after 2 weeks of staying somewhere, 1 month of staying somewhere, if they are doing pest control, that is going to add to the stress of my body, add to the health harm in my body. Again, I would feel physically stressed out, emotionally stressed out, and also my organ system, and both physical and emotional stressing was happening. Because emotional stress is happening because my cardiac problems started escalating, my breathing problems start escalating, and emotional stress is happening because now I don't know where I should go next. So all of these were combined, causing me to feel more depressed, more suicidal also sometimes. Not in those places where I was feeling unsafe, but the places where I was feeling the most unsafe, I was feeling the suicidal aspects as well. And then there is another element I want to introduce. This is a long video, and this part, if you have ever heard talks of BK Shivani, you will see they talk about the energy of what we do. So she talks about when you're cooking with good mindset, good energy, that cooking, while you're doing the cooking with good energy, the good energy of what you did while cooking, or that energy will transpire into the food you have cooked. So if a happy cook cooks your food and you consume that food, you will feel happy naturally. If a balanced mom, healthy mom is cooking your food, the emotions of the mom also goes in the food. And people say this, right? It's not just a saying, it's the real truth. That why do we, if you know your wife and mother will cook the same recipe and say your mother loves you more or you love your mother's cooking more, you will always feel like really gravitating towards the food your mother has cooked for you, right? Why? Because for years you're used to eating that food, but also because the love that was present in the food that your mother might have poured into the cooking. All of these factors can end up making someone love their mother's food a lot more than any other food that they have eaten outside their home. Same way, if you have a wife who cooks really lovingly for you and your mother never cooked that lovingly for you, again the wife's cooking will seem preferential to you. That can start happening because the emotions and energy used while someone was cooking also plays a role. So if you have a depressed parent cooking for you, a depressed or stressed out cook cooking for you, that depression and stress of the cook, whoever is the cook, it doesn't matter if it is a cook in your home, doesn't matter if it is your parent who was cooking for you or your sibling who was cooking for you, whoever was cooking, their emotional energy that went into the cooking they did for you, and when you're consuming that food, that energy also stays in that food, and that energy is also responsible for your feeling stressed or depressed depending on what energy the mother or the person cooking had. That's why they say happy wife happy life. Why? Or happy spouse happy, you will have a good life if you have a happy spouse. Why? Because if you bring happiness, comfort to your spouse or your family, that same happiness and comfort related energy goes into every activity that you do in your life. I mean, it goes into all the activities you're doing. If you brought good comfort and happiness in your family life, the one who's cooking will feel happy when they are cooking happily. You will feel that happiness in the food you consume. One who was cooking unhappily, again that unhappiness will show up in your food, and then you will indirectly have the emotional impact of it in the form of depression or whatever they were going through emotionally. And then there is another aspect, which is the aspect of the animal itself or plant itself from which you are gathering your nutrition and food. If how I am feeling stressed and depressed and anxious when I am inhaling a lot of pesticides or consuming a lot of food, and other environmental conditions are adding to my chemical exposures and toxins into my body, leading me to feel emotionally stressed, emotionally depressed, emotionally anxious, or physically actually feeling very jittery because some biochemical processes and motor neural and nervous system processes are getting influenced and impacted. Same way, what is happening to me as a human is also happening to a plant, is also happening to an animal. The plant's impact you can study via those scientists who know how to study the emotional responses of a plant, and those who do the recording of what the plant is responding to, they can do these tests and find out when a plant is subject to a lot of chemicals how it feels, and when a plant is subject to no chemicals or less chemicals how it feels. Those kind of studies they can do. Similarly with animals also, the animals are also showing symptoms of trauma, stress from the chemicals in their environment. That's why we have these animals coming up with monkeys pox, or animals with eczema, animals with arthritis and other motor neuron function related problems, or even the product that the animal will give you if you are taking milk from an animal which is abused, milk from milk and butter and all that other byproducts that you will get from a cow. If that was an abused cow, not simply like physically abused by a farmer, but also emotionally abused, also not taken well fed, also living in an area where a lot of water pollution, air pollution is there, all of these will impact the quality of nutritious food it can give to us. And that quality of food will be impacted, the energy of that food will be impacted if the animal is getting tortured also by its owner. Like, if someone who is like milking a cow, there's a way to gently milk the cow, lovingly milk the cow, and there's a hurried way of milking a cow, or cruel way of getting food from the cow, or getting the milk from the cow, or getting food from your trees. Because I've seen all these people who are like just callously picking fruits, callously milking a cow. All of these, the energy you put, if you put hate-filled energy, you don't like your work, and maybe that's why you're callously doing this to the cow, or you don't like your master, that energy is there inside of you. All these negative energies that you are using while milking a cow, while plucking a tree, or you were depressed, and in depressed energy you plucked the fruits and plants, and gathered the fruits and plants, and then sold the fruits and plants. All this energy also is accumulating around the animal and plant product that you will be consuming later on. So is it possible, even if you are from the richest family on earth, and if you are depressed, is it possible you're depressed because the food you're consuming, the source of all these different places where the cook is depressed, the farmer was depressed, the animal was being tortured and unhappy, the plant was being tortured and unhappy because of chemicals in its environment. All of these combined, all the negative energy that has accumulated in all these different steps of the food process chain, which finally lands up on your table. How much ever you have the 5-star restaurant chef giving you, because you're ultra rich, you have a 5-star level chef in your home, or you go to a 5-star restaurant to eat those foods. In any of these areas, even if the chef, the end person who's cooking the food, is doing it lovingly, but if everything before that chef's process was messed up, that depression, that stress, that hatred, that anger, that whatever negative emotion that plant or animal felt or human felt while doing the work they were doing, all of that energy transfers into your food you're consuming, and you will end up feeling depressed and anxious, or other emotional issues will show up depending on the combination of things happening to the food you are consuming. So I hope this made sense, and if anyone has any questions, please drop a comment. Thank you.